running for Congress out of the state of Georgia. How about it for Bob Christian, everybody? Look at you. Congratulations on making it this far. Make sure you're unmuted so we can hear you. I saw the first. Remind everybody where District 7 is, which is where you're running there in the state of Georgia.
Oh, gladly. And thank you for having me back, Mark. I truly appreciate it. And there was absolutely no problem waiting back in the wings because I hate to say it, but it's always entertaining to watch half of these candidates run for Congress. It's some of the most fun that you can have today to listen to the stuff that comes out of one person's mouth compared to the other. And I wanted to real quick touch on the Haitian segment that you were doing, because one thing that nobody talks about in the press, nobody talks about, period, is that twice, not just once, but twice, the temporary protected status for those very immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, came up under the Trump administration and was renewed. And so this is an issue that shouldn't surprise them. This is an issue that shouldn't be like, oh my God, they're in Springfield. They authorized that. They reauthorized that. They kept that program in place. So, I mean, whether or not this is a circumstance that is actually disastrous for Springfield, they kept it there. They knew it was there, and they kept it there, and they don't want to talk about that part of it. And
such a great point. That's really a terrific point. Thank you. There's a lot of stuff like that, stuff that was going on already during the Trump administration, and now they're just trying to tag Harris with everything that happened under Biden's watch as well. So yeah, remind everybody where the District 7 is, and then we can.
North Georgia. So I'm down here in North Georgia. I'm just down the road from the Lake and Riley incident you talked about. I also want to point out that there have been a dozen murders since that moment that have all been committed by American citizens, and we're not hearing about any of those. And so this is exactly to your point, of political emphasis on trying to create a problem that was a problem that they made a problem.
Sure.
And it's, but I'm in North Georgia. It is Lumpkin County, Forsyth County, Dawson County, Cherokee County, a little bit of Hall County, a little bit of Fulton County. So think Northwest Atlanta and then north from there.
Okay.
And so it's
okay.
The upper
Now,
part
I always hear that that part of Georgia is, very. And please pardon me, I say this with respect, and I'm such a, an urbanite that, I could go down there and probably fake it for a day and a half maybe, but people would kind of realize, hey, this guy isn't the real thing. That there's sort of okay, so here's the cartoonish version of outside of Atlanta when you just get the rest of Georgia. It's like Beverly Hillbillies kind of thing. But it's not. I think that can't possibly be the way it is, because when I talk to you and others I know in Georgia, they don't strike me as Beverly Hillbillies.
No, but I do understand why people think that. In fact, I get that in my own district a little bit, because the southern half of my district, that port that's closer to Atlanta, much more urban, much more developed, much more kind of city type environment, an urban environment, if you will. And then you cross into the northern few counties of my district and go further north from there, you're in cattle country, you're in horse country. You're in farming country. We've got a lot of bee farms out here, oddly. We've got chicken farms. We've got horse farms. We've got cattle farms. Agriculture is the number one industry in the state of Georgia. And so when you get outside that bubble that is Atlanta, you get outside that bubble that is Savannah, you get outside that bubble that is Augusta, you're in very rural territory. And it creates this stark contrast between the type of people that I want to represent. And one of the most common questions I get is from my constituents down in Roswell, down in the Atlanta area. They'll ask me directly. They'll be like, what do I have in common with somebody that lives up in North Georgia cattle country? Because I live down here in the big city. And for our district, even though it is gerrymandered, I think we talked a little bit about that the last time I was here. It was written very specifically so that Republicans in the state could win it. In fact, it was written very specifically so the man that holds the office could win it. Least American district in the United States of America, because they openly said, here's your congressional district, sir. And it's, but the thing that they have in common is that the central corridor of the district, literally, it begins in Atlanta, it terminates in Lumpkin County, it runs directly north to south through the center of the district, is what's known as the Highway 400 corridor. It's State Highway 400. It is the fastest growing economic corridor in the state of Georgia, quite possibly one of the fastest. In fact, on the map, it's that bright line that goes right down where the 19 is from Waswell up through. And that's an older map. That's not an accurate recreation of the district. It's going to be tough for you to find a good one, Kim, because they've changed it 4 times in the last 6 years. It's
that's the game they play with these House races. It's so very hard.
It's amazing what's happening down here in Georgia.
So, Bob, what is the stuff that you campaign on? It's interesting, we just showed the clips, and obviously a centerpiece of that, you can call it interview. I'd call it like it was almost like a gangland hit that they put on Kamala Harris last night on Fox. The centerpiece was immigration because they think they can really gain some political points with immigration. So you had that question sliced and diced a million different ways. But what is the stuff that resonates and lands with your constituency or your potential constituency?
The absolute biggest issue in North Georgia at the moment is women's rights. The absolute biggest issue in North Georgia at the moment. I happen to think it's the biggest issue across the country. It's a centerpiece of my campaign because it comes down to how you define rights. It comes down to how you define freedom in this case. And for me, it strikes all the way back. This is an argument we've been having since damn near day one here in the United States, is what defines freedom and who gets to be free. And the best way I've ever heard it put was when Frederick Douglass stood up before a group of white human beings in North America, the northern part of the United States, right around the verges of the Civil War, and said, "I stand before you a thief and a robber. I have stolen this head, these arms, these legs, these limbs to come and speak before you tonight." And the speech that he went on to give talked about the importance of being free as in being in control of your own self. If you don't have bodily autonomy, if you don't have control of your own person, then you're not free. It doesn't matter what way you define freedom. You're not free if you don't have control of your own self. And at the moment, very suddenly, women in this nation are being pulled backwards from that freedom. For 50 years, they had a great set of rules in Roe v. Wade that balanced both their personal privacy, personal autonomy with the concerns of society, because at some point, society does get to be concerned about the people in its society. And Roe v. Wade balanced that out perfectly. Perfectly.
It's fascinating to me that does land so well because I think on some level within the media's voracious appetite for the next story, and it's just such a short attention span that we have, there is an odd thing that's happened, which is that we've forgotten, and again, I'm just looking at sort of mainstream media coverage and just what's out there in the zeitgeist generally, we've forgotten this horrifying decision and the fraud that preceded it by, that settled law, we'd never touch it, all of this thing that Kavanaugh said, that Coney Barrett said, that, what's his name, who's I forget, the guy who preceded them, his mom ran the EPA under Bush. Anyway, point is, this is as you suggested, landmark decision that takes away a substantial right from these people, women, who make up the lion's share of the country, and somehow it doesn't still get into the zeitgeist the way it did when it first went down. So I'm getting to, with a lengthy preamble, to the point, which is when I see the first day, and this very much applies to you, the first day of voting in Georgia, breaking records in Atlanta and in the Georgia rolls, never has there been the kind of showing as there was in the first day of Georgia voting. It tells me something is animating that one issue, I suspect, and it ain't immigration. And I'm guessing you're onto something. It is indeed, it's Roe v. Wade and that overturn.
I think it is, yeah. I think it is definitely that. We had 328,000 people cast an early vote on the very first day of early voting here in Georgia. The previous record was 162,000, so we doubled it. We doubled it. And no one's truly surprised about that. Both parties have been coming out with strong rhetoric. I've said it a million times myself, is vote early and then go to the Secretary of State site and make sure your vote counts, because there's some weird shenanigans about voting here in the state. But the Republican Party has been doing the same thing for their people. Vote early, make sure that counts, go as soon as you can, have a plan. And I think we're seeing the results of that. But the fascinating news, the incredible news that is coming out of these numbers, because yesterday we crossed 500,000 voters. I think today we're going to push about 750,000. And I think by the end of the week, tomorrow, we're going to be over 1 million people who've cast an early vote here in the state of Georgia. It's an incredible turnout. But 10% of those voters are voters that have not ever cast a vote before in the state of Georgia.
So to follow up then, it's interesting, you kind of hint at it. The GOP also is trying to get their people out.
Mm.
Trump's message very different than the message he had the last time, which was sort of, this is crazy. I don't know why anybody votes by mail. I don't know why anybody votes early. Why can't we just vote on election day, et cetera. Now it's go out, vote early. So the basic historical touchstone on early voting is that it's a Democratic push, okay? And you sort of hinted that you think it generally is, but you've also noted what I was just saying, which is that Trump has emphasized early voting. So when you kind of try to handicap all of that, you still think it's likely a huge Democratic surge or with a taste of Republican, or do you think it might be more of a clean mix percentage-wise?
That's an excellent question. That's actually the $1 million question, because it's, if you pull a room together of Democratic pundits, they're going to tell you that Democrats vote early, that if we see a huge surge in early voting, it can only be good for Democrats. And so we'll never know what the numbers are going to mean until we get to election day and see the surge on the same day voting. When you talk to Republican pollsters, they're saying that our turnout the vote machine has worked really incredibly well, and that's what you're seeing is this new surge of Republican voters and I don't think either one of them quite have it right. I kind of liked what you said about a Democratic flair with a taste of Republican in it. It's I know that this district, the 7th district here in Georgia, is one of the most diversifying, fastest growing districts in the United States. We are seeing a huge increase in young people that are voting for the first time. I spent a couple hours last night with a large group of those folks, and they're excited and they're all in and they want to see change. They have a different set of issues than your general voter, but they are looking to find out where they can make an impact. They're going to be huge. But it's these people in the neighborhoods. When I first started doing polling data around my county, Dawson County, it is the lowest population county in the district. Out of these 765,000 people in my district, there are only about 30,000 of them in Dawson County. But Dawson County is the microcosm for what's about to happen in this region. You were talking earlier under the Haitian immigration bit about how you bring in an influx of people and it puts pressure on a system. Well, we're not bringing anybody from anywhere per se. We're just growing. People are just moving here as they move out of the growing city. It's just that natural progression of growth that comes in a healthy economy. Well, Dawsonville's 5-year plan was based around the idea that 5 years from now, we would have 35,000 people in the district or in the county. Now, very suddenly, we're anticipated to have 50,000 people in the county by 5 years. And that's a huge, huge increase in growth that the county's not prepared to handle. We don't have the tax base to move from 28,000 to 50,000. We don't have the roads to move from 28,000 to 50,000. All those things that were stressed in Springfield, Ohio by this influx of immigration is what's happening across the 7th district of the United States, or at least of Georgia, because of just natural growth, of just people living here and growing and becoming better and being attracted to success. And
so
success,
you don't ascribe that surge in those coming into your area as an immigration push. You're saying it's just the natural evolution?
Yeah, no, we do have some immigration. We have one of the largest and fastest growing AAPI communities here in North Georgia, but that's not what's driving the growth. The honest answer is what's driving the growth is it is impossible to find an affordable place to live in the city of Atlanta. And so people are coming further and further and further away from Atlanta to find somewhere to live. And the commute going back into that city has become god awful. It really, truly has. And all the things that we complain about with growth. I mean, we complain about our streets are clogged. We complain about that it's hard for our police to get around, our ambulance to get around, our firefighters to get around. All of that, we have the opportunity right now in the 7th district to start working on if we had a federal representative that was willing to tap into the dollars available under that entire list of things that Kamala Harris just mentioned in the Fox interview. There are literally billions of dollars available for infrastructure projects, for park and city rec projects, for rebuilding fire departments, for rebuilding police departments, for adding to medical care. All the things that you need to grow, the secondary and tertiary services that need to grow with a population. And that money is there, and that ability is there. It just takes a representative at the congressional level willing to walk across the hall and say, hey, Mr. Appropriations Committee guy, I need some appropriations. And our representative is not doing that. $0 in appropriations over the last 2 years, when we have seen an increase of about 12% population in this district. Zero. Doesn't care. Voted down FEMA funding and not Our district wasn't impacted by that, but our state was. The Southeast was. I
And that
mean,
was a straight party vote, in other words. That's the
hmm.
reason he went against FEMA. Wow. I mean, I got to think that this people are beginning to have had enough about this. How are you trending, Bob? Have you gotten any sort of early sense of where you are in this race? It's an uphill slug, I would think.
Oh, it is an uphill slug. No, it's I was definitely the underdog coming into the race, and that I'm used to that. I was the underdog when I started this campaign a few years ago for the 6th district. They changed the numbers. Now I'm for the
Right.
7th district, but it's the same
Crazy.
piece of earth. And it is a deep red district. Like I said, it was drawn very specifically to hand it to one man. It is what I call the least American congressional district in the United States because they didn't open it up for any competition. My opponent has not once agreed to meet with me in public. He has not once answered any of the charges I've made about his policy decisions or his personal decisions in public. He is running as if I'm not there, completely and utterly running as if there are no such things as Democrats in the 7th
Because
district.
he knows the fix is in, really, in this case. Yeah.
It's well, they all thought that was the case last time around, and they drew a 60 or a 60-40 district, and I did take that 40%. It was kind of unexpected for them because they didn't think a Democrat would step up, and I'm polling higher than the 40% this time around. And my goal when I came into this race this time, obviously, I'm in it to win it. I mean, that's the phrase, that's the reason, and you don't do this without the idea that you can win that seat. And there is an opportunity for us to win that seat this cycle right now, right here. But the honest, real answer is it's probably going to take another crack at this. It might take another shot at the title. And that's fine. I'm in that for the long haul. But right now, very suddenly, because of that weird 10% of people that have never voted before, that's enough to swing it. That's enough to wake up surprised on November 6th, which I think a lot of people are going to do. I think a ton of people are going to wake up on November 6th and be like, holy crap, what just happened yesterday? And I hope to be one of them. I really, truly do. But the honest answer to your question is that I'm anticipating I'm coming about 44, 45%, which here in North Georgia is remarkable. And I will not take away from anything that my team has done, anything that my candidates have done, anything that my campaign has done. If we can hit that mark, if we can pull in at the 45% mark, then next time when we run this, we'll very suddenly have that national support that we need.
I love to hear that. And I love that you look at the long haul, because I think politics and change often is incremental.
Mm-hmm.
I know this from other movements I'm part of. We kind of have to settle for incremental movement, and everybody hates it. And progressives really hate. I mean, you don't please live under the progressive label. I'm just using it as an example. They can't. There's a purity test. They hate Biden. They hate Harris. They hate it because nobody can live up to the, this purity test. And I just think that on some level you have to accept incremental change. Sad as it is, that is the way it works. Politics is a long fight. Change is an evolution that takes a lot of time. And Bob, you say all the right things. I'd love to have you back even after this race is concluded to just occasionally weigh in on stuff. You're such a smart guy, and you deserve to. Yeah,
and I would love to come back.
Congress.
I want to touch on something that you just said though about the incremental change, about the moving forward on that. It's you have to also see the change while it's happening. Our campaign here in Georgia has been going spectacularly well, and I want to use this last week as an example of why. And these are going to be small numbers. All of your listeners, especially out in that direction, out on the West Coast, you've got huge crowds that come out for these events. You've got big political movements that happen. You see rallies with tens of thousands of people. You've got the stadiums and places to put them. We don't. We're a tiny series of rural towns in the north, huge gatherings in the south, very Democratic down south, very Republican up north. And over the last week, we gathered 50 people in Dawson County, Georgia, in a park to meet with Senator John Ossoff. And Senator John Ossoff came to Dawson, Georgia, of all places on the planet, and emphasized the principles and ideals that we believe in. And we brought out a crowd of people to come and talk to him. From that moment, I traveled with the senator to Canton, Georgia, which is in the deep red Cherokee County. And it is a county, again, that is growing and changing, but 300 people filled a building to come hear us say what we have to say and to encourage them to go out and make change. And then the next week, we opened up an office in the same place, and another 300 people showed up in the downtown deep red district. We had 400 people standing on 3 different street corners to cheer and razz the former president as he drove through Forsyth, Georgia, to that weird Fox News thing that he did just recently with the women. It's tiny numbers, 300 people, 400 people, 50 people. But my goodness sakes, to do that in the middle of deep red Georgia, where people are actually afraid to say they're Democrats, that's the change we're making. That's the network we're building. Because next cycle, when something comes up and we need people to come out, we've already got 50 to start with. Let's just grow from there. We've already got 300 to start with. We grow from there. And so that's the work we're doing. It's like I said, I think a lot of people are going to wake up surprised November 6th. I think I've got a legitimate shot to win this thing this cycle. But
I love it.
I
Bob
know
Christian,
for a fact,
he's
the work we're doing is going to lead to victory down the road.
Well, I mean, and it's a great, it seems like it's righteous work at that. The congressional candidate for District 7 is Bob Christian, Christian 4GA7.
And I see the website on the screen. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And so I also see my staff has made some changes to that.
Christian4GA7.com. Bob Christian. Love your takes, love our visits, and I want them to continue regardless of what happens, but I wish you luck and hope that you actually get victory in a race that they have made so very difficult for anyone else to win. So thanks, Bob.
It's amazing what they've done down here.
It's good old-fashioned, I mean, Southern politics, but it's,
can I steal 1 minute national. Before I leave? I want to steal
real
1
quick
minute before I leave because I wanted to update everybody. I know last time we talked about the actions of our state election board. And
yeah, please. Yeah, because there was just a major announcement by that judge in Georgia. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah, just as of yesterday, we've had a series of 2 cases in a row, and none of those rules were deemed to be accurate rules. They have all been thrown out. The hand counting rule, the you have a reasonable thing. And I wanted to just say that's the judicial system that we have here in Georgia, and that's why I wasn't too terribly concerned about what was the end result. But I want everybody to be aware of what they're doing to get there. Because now, in several states, they've launched an attack on overseas ballot, which is how our military votes. And they're saying somehow that those are illegitimate. And so it's everybody needs to be truly aware that this is a plot, this is a plan, this is a scheme to cast doubt on our fair, free election system. An election system has carried us for 250 years. Is it perfect? No. But does it work? Yes. And everything they're doing is trying to make you think that it doesn't, so that when they stand up and go, it's just not fair, it's not because their policies are crap, it's because our system is. They are losing because their policies are crap. And we need to just keep that at the forefront of our minds. Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, Bob. We'll see you again soon. Great closing remarks, and I look forward to the next conversation. Thanks. Bob Christian, everybody. See you, Bob. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.